I guess we're here. We're back. Welcome to the podcast. 6 days in a row, we tried to make it. Welcome to the Colonel and the Kid podcast. I am your host, Greg Heitmann. I'm the kid. And the Colonel is none other than Lieutenant Colonel Edwin P. Hagen Jr., my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, my mom's dad. And this podcast is dedicated to his memory, really. It's a record of my relationship with my grandfather and his influence over my life. And hopefully it's just a good documentation of that, that lifelong relationship. And now extending past his life. I think I mentioned earlier podcast that he passed away in 2007 or 2008. I think it was 2007. So he's still influencing me from the grave, I guess. Trying to record some of those memories, and I've written the memoir, and that's what this podcast is based on. And now I'm doing the actual audio and video documentation of those memories and life lessons. And I think it's going okay. Today is going to be chapter 28, The American Legion. And this one's pretty interesting. Probably not well known by a lot of people, but the people that do know of it think well of the organization. So I will leave it there for now. And we'll get to that chapter shortly, but I just wanted to get a little more background on the podcast here. Like I said, Colonel and the Kid podcast, and I am the kid. One of the things that I've talked about repeatedly is that this is my kind of like my psychotherapy, or just a psychoanalysis of myself, which is probably violating the canon of ethics of psychology, just analyzing yourself and documenting it. I don't know why that would that'd be an ethical violation. You're just learning about yourself and trying to know more about yourself, be a better person, hopefully. I guess if you're a psychopath, you can analyze yourself and see how you could be more psychopathic. But, we're not doing that here, where this is only for good, never for evil. That's the kind of podcast this is, and that's the kind of podcast this will always be, only for good. If we have like a superhero podcast, this would be the motto. Only for good, never evil. So anyway, the memoir is the spine of the podcast, and this is the broken record repetition that I talk about. The memoir is the spine, and then I branch off into some other things. And I'm hoping today is a little shorter chapter, and we can have a couple other sections I have some notes on, and we'll get to those depending on how we do on time wise. And I'm still dog sitting. So I have a dog out in the backyard. I gave her a bone to chew on. That'll probably keep her preoccupied for 15 minutes. But typically I go for an hour on the podcast. Depending on her fit of barking that we might be hearing. I don't think it comes up on the podcast. I don't think you can hear it, but I don't want to torture my neighbors with that howling and barking and crying of a poor dog in a strange backyard. This is the last full day of dog sitting. Tomorrow, her owner comes back, Esteban, and turn her back over to his care. Hopefully safe and sound. Wish me luck with that. Anyway, maybe having a section about dog sitting coming up here in the end of this podcast. We'll see. Let's just go ahead and jump into the chapter. Again, this is the Colonel and the Kid memoir, chapter 28, The American Legion. And we always start with a quote. Quote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people. but care more about their opinions than our own, end quote. And that's a quote from Marcus Aurelius and his booklet Meditations. So that's the start of the chapter. Some more psychology to kick this off, and let's just jump into the chapter and see where we go. Just this week, and I added parenthetically in my writing here, December 23rd, 2020. That's just about 6 years ago. I received my 2021 American Legion Post 39 membership card in the mail. I think my jaw dropped when I saw that it was stamped with 27 continuous years. If that isn't one of the starkest reminders of the stupefyingly quick passage of time, I don't know what is. It seems like just yesterday, I joined the American Legion in Groton, South Dakota, soon after I returned from Army Basic Training and Advanced Individual Training, the AIT, in the fall of 1993. Membership was and still is open because of the ongoing Middle East conflicts after the Gulf War. For those unfamiliar with the American Legion, it is a veterans organization with a mission to enhance the well-being of America's veterans, their families, our military, and our communities by our devotion to mutual helpfulness. The American Legion's vision statement is the American Legion, Veterans Strengthening America. And we have the first photo of the chapter. I don't think there's very many photos compared to some of the recent chapters. But here's the first one. And I'll read the caption, then talk about it a little bit and describe it. Photo of my 2022 American Legion membership card. I lost my photo of the 2021 membership card I had, so here's the 2022 card indicating 28 continuous years of membership. So it's just a little picture of the card for your wallet, and it's signed by the post commander, Groton, South Dakota, their post 39, and then I signed on the bottom too. It's got a little emblem of the flag on the left corner and the American Legion symbol on the right corner, and this membership card 2022 American Legion. Veterans Strengthening America, it says on there. Then South Dakota, post 39, and my membership number, and in the background, and it's the picture in that the card is on it's the National World War I Memorial, Washington, D.C. So anyway, that's a little description of it. Back to the chapter. Grandpa was a member of the Otto Quande Renville American Legion Post number 50 in Siston, South Dakota for over 50 years. Now, I'm about halfway there when it comes to following in his footsteps. This is just another example of how I wanted to be the kind of good man Grandpa was, and replicating his activities could maybe, just maybe, lead me down the right path. As I look back, there was something missing for me. Maybe I felt inferior in some respects, and mimicking Grandpa would somehow reveal the Tao, the way for me. I mentioned Ducks Unlimited and my membership in that organization for many years, just like Grandpa. Add the National Rifle Association, the NRA, to that list. Grandpa was a life member, and I've been a life member since about 1994. It's a goal of mine to finish this memoir and submit the manuscript to the NRA's hunting magazine and to the American Legion magazine for consideration of publishing a chapter or two, and maybe getting a mention/endorsement of the memoir from those organizations. I think for me, that would define a measure of success. My grandpa's memories memorialized in a national publication that were significant to him and to me. Maybe osmosis would turn me into the person I envisioned Grandpa was. I don't think it works that way. My efforts haven't been the best. I have to admit that I've been pretty much an absentee member of the American Legion. The best evidence of this is that I haven't lived in Groton in over 21 years, yet I'm still a member of that post. Grandpa, on the other hand, was a post commander for a time, and most significantly in my mind, he was a founding member of the Black Hawk drill team. And here we have the second photo. And I'll read the caption and describe. The caption reads: Photo of Grandpa with the Black Hawk drill team at Fort Siston, circa 1961. And this is a black and white photo of the Black Hawk drill team. They were like a flag honor guard, I guess. Basically, that was the main thing. But they did marching competitions across the state, and they were sponsored and functioned out of the American Legion in Siston, South Dakota. And this is a picture of taken up at the Fort Siston State Park, and I don't know, it's probably like about 15-member troop. They have guns and a flag, and my grandpa in this photo, I think he's over in the far left, and a lot of the members of the group are obscured, and the leader of the group is actually grandpa's brother, Curvin Hagen. And he was actually in the Marines and served over in the Pacific Theater during World War II. And I think he was in some big skirmishes over there with the Marines. I don't know if he was in, not sure, if it seemed like he might have been in Iwo Jima or other islands over there. There's many, obviously many islands, but in the island hopping campaign to try to win the war against Japan in the Pacific Theater. But he's the leader of the troop, and Grandpa was a founding member, and they have and I should describe, they're all in uniform. They have this is a black and white photo, but it was like a dark navy blue, black, almost black, long sleeve shirt and pants and black boots and black, kind of like a cowboy hat with a gold braid around the hat as a hat band. And they wore the long gauntlet leather type gloves as part of their uniform. Real sharp, looking good. And we'll get back to we'll move on to the next photo. There's another photo here. I'll read the caption and then describe it. Photo of Grandpa and drill team presenting colors at Metropolitan Stadium for a Minnesota Vikings game. On the back of the frame photo, Grandpa had inscribed in his military penmanship, Bloomington Stadium, Blackhawks with Northern State Marching Band. Viking game with San Francisco 49ers. Vikings won. And so it's another black and white photo, and it's got like the U.S. flag, and then I think the American Legion post flag on there, and it's probably, I don't know if it's as many people, maybe it's a little less, maybe it's like 10, 12 members of the Black Hawk drill team. And Curvin is front and center leading the troop, and I don't see my grandpa. Some of the faces are obscured in this photo. It's sort of an action photo where they're still getting into formation, stepping into formation to bring the color guard and display the United States flag for the national anthem before the football game. So, but they're in their uniform, and then behind them is the Northern State Marching Band, great big, huge, many-member band. And then behind them is part of the stadium and the bleachers for the football game. It looks like a pretty good crowd. There's some empty seats up in the upper deck of the two-tiered stadium. It's not a stadium like the modern day huge, gigantic arenas and stadiums for playing NFL football, but I don't have a year on this. It's got to be mid 60s, I'm guessing, when they're at the height of the Black Hawk drill team. So I should do some research and see if I could come up with the schedule, because they don't play the 49ers very often in just the rotation of their the schedule for the Vikings. So I could probably track that down, especially since they won, and include that information on this photo. But anyway, good photo. It's very crisp, very professional, just like the previous photo, very crisp and professionally taken. Glad I still have those memories, and now I have them electronically too. So even though I don't know where these actual framed photos are right now at this very moment, I have electronic record of them for the memoir here. So makes me feel good that they're preserved. And I'll add these photos to the video podcast via the YouTube video, which I'll post along with the audio like I usually do. But back to the chapter. The Black Hawk drill team participated in many public events, presenting the colors for the national anthem. Grandpa was a full participant in the American Legion, which is not surprising. In any undertaking Grandpa chose, he was all in. There was no half measure. There's no doubt that Grandpa was more social than I have ever been. I'm a loner. That's not a surprising admission. I like being alone. It's a great attribute for being a writer. Being by myself, sitting in front of this computer, it's comfortable for me. For God and country since 1919. That is the motto that appears on the American Legion magazine. And by coincidence, my latest edition arrived in the mail yesterday. And here we have another photo, and it's a photo of the American Legion magazine. And I'll read the caption here and then try to describe. Photo of the cover of my most recent American Legion magazine, July 2022. And here we are. Like I said, it's taken me a while to get here, but we're here. And that's, just under 4 years ago now that I started writing this and putting this stuff together. It's not published yet. And, it's going to be semi-published, audio and video published, but it's not going to be available in any written form quite yet, because this is part of volume 2 of the memoir. We have the volume 1, chapters 1 through 20, and this is going to be volume 2, 21 through 40. And actually, this is season 2 of the podcast because it's based on the volume 2 of the memoir. So there's a lot of moving parts going on here. And I'm just trying to get it out, I guess, because I think it's important to get it out as soon as I can. So, if nothing else, it might help people, provide some, I guess, what I like to consider there's some guidance in the wisdom that my grandpa shared with me. And I'm trying to interpret that and put it in here. Maybe it's more like a self-help book in some ways. That's what I kind of think about when I'm working on this, that this is something useful. So that's sort of my idea of why I'm hurrying along, getting these podcasts out there so that they can be enjoyable, but actually have some informational use too. So, infotainment. I don't know if I've said that before, but that's what I always like to think of as the stuff I work on. It provides some historic background as well as provides some entertainment. So that's information and entertainment, infotainment. Pretty good combination. Anyway, let me describe the photo here. This was a weird one because this is at the height of wokeness, I'll say it. And this American Legion magazine had a big headline on it saying "Historic Command, USS Constitution's place in today's Navy." And what it is, it's the USS Constitution, which is actually still a commissioned Navy ship, but it's the USS Constitution, that old sailing ship with sails and stuff. And on the cover of this American Legion magazine at this date in July 2022, this magazine has a price tag of $2.50 on it. I should mention that. But it's got the picture of the rigging and the mast, a partial view of the mast. The sails aren't up, but they have the new commander of the sailing ship. And I guess the historic command in this situation was that it was a woman was taking over command of the ship. And I have nothing against women, but I do think that making everything about race, sex, or anything, and having to make any sort of I guess notability about it, it just rubs me the wrong way that we have to have everything equal and everything percentage wise divvied up properly. And that was part of the wokeness. And I think that's going away. I think it's more, we're trying to get back to the more of a meritocracy where it's like, how qualified are you to do something and how competent are you? And I thought about changing out this cover and I thought, no, I'm gonna leave it in there and make a comment on that because it's just, it's just so so bothersome to me that this is something that we had to go through. We're trying to make everyone equal. We're not equal. I mean, there's differences in everybody's different. That's the whole beauty of being a human being, I guess, and being able to enjoy life as different people. Because if everyone's the same, it'd be pretty darn boring. If everyone did the same thing, said the same thing, looked the same, sure wouldn't be living. But anyway, I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I probably said way too much there, but uh, I mean, this just goes to show you that nothing, nothing is immune to the whims of, I guess, of the current fad and popularity of things. This that the wokeness at the time, it was just so bad. And I think we hit that peak wokeness. It's come down, and we're back on a better track. I must say, I believe so anyway. But back to the chapter. It's not like I have had the best relationship with the American Legion my whole life. The fact is that I was only peripherally familiar with the Legion until 1987, my senior year in high school. I was obviously aware of the Legion's sponsorship of the American Legion baseball. Groton is a baseball town with a long history of success. But in 1987, that was the year that the senior boys in Groton High School, in which I was a member, were treated to supper at the Red Horse Inn and Restaurant by American Legion Post number 39. Each student said a few words to make his case as a candidate for Boys State. The annual week-long government education/stimulation experience was sponsored by the American Legion. It was a token application for me. I was not originally from Groton, so even though I may have been a good candidate for Boys State, I had no chance to be selected. Such is the way of the United States, a place where who you know still trumps what you know for the most part. My issue was probably not so much an American Legion problem as it was a Groton problem. 30 plus years later, here I still resent being passed over by an organization that does noble things. But because I wasn't from the right family, I didn't make it. That's one of my goals in retirement, to carve out time and dedicate efforts to advancing the goals of the Legion, including reviewing how candidates for Boys State are selected, especially from small towns. The quote by Marcus Aurelius to start this chapter sums up a lot of the psychology I like to research and reflect upon in an introspective manner. And I add parenthetically, that's one of the reasons I wrote this whole memoir, is just it's part of that introspection that I have actually put down through keystrokes onto a computer and then printed out on paper and reviewed. So apparently, it is in our human nature to worry about what others think. I think that is a fair statement. All our brains do during waking hours is compare things. Everything is relative. What our experiences has been up to this point in our life is stored in our brains, and it tells us through comparison what we can expect with each new encounter based on what happened to us in previous similar situations. It is so cool to think about. It's probably why I, along with most of the population, have some anxiety. We just don't have enough stored memories to recall when faced with a new situation and compare successes and failures in how to address the latest challenge. Again, it's wisdom, and that can only be accumulated with time. Wisdom is a differentiator in how you go about and make decisions. I add parenthetically. There's that tricky time element that comes into play. It's been years since my grandpa passed away, enough to let me put some order to my thoughts and record them. And I'm going to add as an aside here. This is maybe just a partially captured thoughts that I have about thinking in general and how do humans function and how do we go about our business. There's so many distractions in life. We have to filter out things. That's how the brain is a comparison machine or filtering machine, trying to filter out all the things that are not important and how to make sure that we're, basically keeping ourselves alive, but then be able to enjoy things and build things and make things better and continue on. So there's so much stuff that you have to do all the time and think about that can become overwhelming until your brain is trained and efficient enough to know what's important and what is not. So it's really fascinating to me to start thinking about these things and how personally I've done things myself to try to, I guess, fast track or make more efficient how I approach things and how I think about things. And ultimately, I think that's the idea that this is why I consider this a self-help book of how to even discuss things and tell other people about these shortcuts to their own life that they don't have to go through some of the difficulties, how to filter things through their mind and just be responsive to, what was it, the Stephen Covey's idea of first things first. I can't remember what that book was, but that's the idea of uh, his self-help book of, first things first and how you go about living your life, prioritizing things, and, you know, I guess looking towards family first, I guess, and that's your priority in life for the most part is trying to make sure your family's safe, healthy, educated, propped up, getting better. And I guess that's sort of my own idea of how this chapter even came into being, of how the American Legion, that's the goal of making a better country, I guess. And it's sort of a unique sector nowadays, especially because there's fewer and fewer military veterans. At the time the American Legion was started, it was World War One, and there was, a significant number of veterans went over to Europe and helped fight the Germans that first time in World War One. But after World War Two and during World War Two, it was just I don't know what the exact number is. It'd be interesting to do some research on that to see what the population of the country that was actually veterans at the time. And it's gotten to be fewer and fewer. There hasn't been a draft since what, Vietnam, and I think the draft is completely over. We have a complete volunteer army now, and I don't think there's probably just over 1 million soldiers and military members, less than 2 million, I'm pretty sure now. And that's just a tiny fraction of the population. We're probably at 340 million people in this country, and there's just fewer and fewer veterans. So I think that's one of the things that this chapter represents to me is how do we psychologically consider being an American and try to make America better and serving your fellow humans, serving your fellow Americans. Anyway, I'm getting a little digression there, but a worthy topic. I think this would be a good chapter again to review at some point and with someone else and just bounce ideas off, and look forward to doing that in the future at some point when I refresh these things and go through, and I'm going to try to summarize the lessons for each chapter that Grandpa has tried to impart and how I try to capture them in each chapter and then share them with others. So, more to come on that, but we'll continue with the chapter here. And I have another. This is a really cool picture, I think, and I'll read the caption here. The year I was born, 1969, the American Legion celebrated its 50th anniversary. Special whiskey decanter was commissioned by the American Legion to honor the milestone. And I have a little picture of this decanter, and it's got the 50th anniversary, and it's got a picture like I don't know if that's like a Revolutionary War soldier, and then like a modern Air Force airman on the side, and it's got American Legion 50th anniversary by J.W. Dant, Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, 10 years old. And it says it's spelled whiskey, which really catches my eye off guard. I think typically I'll spell whiskey Whiskey, but I think it's the way it's spelled on the bottle, the label, it's Wisky. There's no E in it. And it looks weird to me. So I'd point that out just for the record. And Maybe it's a typo on the label, and then I copied the typo in the caption, but I don't know. I think I I believe that it's acceptable both ways. I think I did some little research on it because I was not sure when I was first typing this up. So, but in this occasion, we're going to accept it as whiskey, Whisky. But back to the chapter and keep pushing forward here. Like I have mentioned, I didn't have the conversations that I would have liked to have had with Grandpa. I would have loved to have had the sense to ask more advice from the wise man. I sit here now and speculate what his response might have been to these words, and even my conscious efforts to follow his footsteps. I imagine Grandpa's advice would have included telling me to live my own life. It makes me laugh because I have I have a memory from my niece, Shayna, all of 10 years old at the time, providing some great life advice to me a few years ago. Although I think it was said in a smart aleck response, she told me, "You do you." And I still think, wow, out of the mouths of babes, you can get the uncorrupted truth. It stuck with me. It's spot on. A person has to live his or her own life, run their own race. Even if I tried to mirror Grandpa's formula for life, it's not going to match. My amateur psychology aside, I've done okay. And here, I have another photo inserted. And this is I'll read the caption and try to describe it here. It's Grandpa on the right and an unnamed Blackhawk drill team member show off the victorious hardware from another winning performance circa 1966. And they're on a porch someplace and they're getting their photograph taken with a couple. They each have they're holding a trophy, pretty big trophy in their hands, and they got their gauntlets, their gloves, their long leather gloves in hand. And I think Grandpa's actually he's got a cigar he's smoking in his right hand, helping hold the trophy. But they're in their Black Hawk uniform, their dark navy, real. It's almost black. It may be black. It probably is black because it's Black Hawk drill team, but it may have been navy. Not sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's black because I think I actually have Grandpa's hat someplace, his Black Hawk hat. But they have their uniforms on and they have the yellow. They're actually wearing yellow suspenders on these uniforms and great big yellow bandanas tied around their necks. And then they have the chevron rank insignia on their shoulders, and their pants sport a bright yellow or gold stripe down the outside inseam of their pants too. And then they have their hats that they have. This is like maybe a little smaller cavalry hat, and it's got it's got a little bit of insignia on it, and it's got a a chin strap to help hold their hat on. Yeah. As compared to my podcast hat I have, my fancy hat, the cowboy hat that I have that I'm wearing. It's become what I call my podcast hat. It's gonna be my logo in the near future. We're gonna have to do like a special image of me wearing this hat that I'll have to incorporate as my logo for the podcast. Anyway, back to the chapter. Grandpa blazed a trail for boys to become good citizens, not only for his grandsons, but for the community with his work in the American Legion. If I haven't used the word admiration to this point, I apologize. Grandpa was a person to admire. Sometimes I am harder on myself than I should be when I compare my life to the standards Grandpa set. It's okay. If I can approach the success and enjoyment Grandpa grabbed out of life, I'll be doing pretty good. It ends up being the nagging philosophical question of life. How do you know if your life meant anything? I'm going to point to this memoir and say I had some success. There was meaning in my existence. I organized and preserved some memories of a humble man that positively impacted his community, South Dakota, the United States, and the world. But most importantly, he lifted his family up another rung on the ladder of the American dream. And here's another photograph of the state champion Blackhawk drill team and firing squad. So I'll read the caption, then we'll talk about a little bit here. 4 years running, state champions, the Black Hawk drill team and firing squad. The photos of the Black Hawk drill team harken me back to my life in officer training school. Part of our graded requirements was to lead a squadron of troops in marching drill. There was an area with boundaries and 2 other squadrons you had to avoid while executing a mandatory list of commands. With a little practice, everyone in my squadron was able to take their turn leading the group, acing this portion of the leadership exam. I had this is a colored photograph, nice color photograph, professionally done, it looks like. And it's got the old label maker that used to like adjust and then press the button and put each letter in there, and then you'd cut it off and then peel the backing off, and it'd be sticky and you could stick it on here. That's still on there. It's a state champion drill team and firing squad, 1961, 1962, 1963, 1964. Quande Post, 50, American Legion, Assistant, South Dakota. And I think it's Otto Quande. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's Quande, Quande or Quand. And then actually they added the third name, Renville, to that post. So it's Otto Quande, Renville Post 50, American Legion. And so I don't know how many members they got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 members of their Black Hawk drill team. And I'm looking for Grandpa. I think he's there in the top bleacher, far right. I believe that's him. Not going to swear to that. It's kind of a small photo. I'm not going to try to zoom in. But they're on like a stage. It's indoors, and they have little bleachers, a little platform set up to be able to take the photo, and you can see everyone's face clearly. And they got the flag bearers, and Curvin is squatting down. He's got a sword. He's the troop commander. And actually, in this photo, they actually have somebody with a drum, like a drummer boy. He looks like a really young kid. Maybe that was a special edition for this picture and for some of their performances, but pretty cool photo. I don't remember seeing this photo until recently when I was putting this together a couple of years ago. This came out of my mom's collection of records and stuff that she had, and then I discovered a lot more stuff that she had that I'd never been aware of. And there's probably even more that I don't know and would probably enjoy seeing. And even my mom's sister Kathy, I think, probably has stuff that that I would enjoy seeing and would like to get a hold of too at some point. Not get a hold of it and keep it, but just to be able to look at it and take pictures of it and record it for the history, my own history of record keeping and putting this memoir together. Anyway, let's finish up the chapter and finish entering it into the official record. So back to the chapter. All in all, the American Legion might seem like a minor chapter in the history of the man I knew as Grandpa. My best memory of the American Legion will be shared in a later chapter. Any hard feelings I might have harbored because I had been, quote, passed over to be a representative at Boy State disappeared in that instant. And that's coming up, I had parenthetically, in a different chapter. That's the end of the chapter, and as always, we'll close with a quote. There are no secrets to success. It is the result of preparation, hard work, and learning from failure, end quote. And that's a quote from Colin Powell, former U.S. General Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. And he was a major leadership figure in the Gulf War. And I think just a great leader overall. I remember I read his autobiography. It was very interesting to me. I think it was sort of a telling, going back to some of my criticism of wokeness here, but this was pre-woke, before woke was even a thing. Colin Powell was an African-American man that rose up to the highest ranks of the military and some high-ranking political appointee positions as National Security Advisor to George W. Bush, president at that time during the second Gulf War. And he had an interesting upbringing, and I think it's a credit just to America that Colin Powell, a man from very modest means in life and a minority, could rise to where the position you know, he ascended to. It's it's a great American story, and I'll leave off there. I'll end the chapter on that note, and we'll happily have it in the record after this. And we're 40 minutes into the podcast, so I feel like I have some time to talk about a couple things that, you know, I have recurring segments in the podcast. I haven't had that last couple days because there's been some longer chapters, and this was a little shorter one. But get a drink of water. Move on. So I don't know what I did with the book, but there's the poster. That poster's coming down. We're gonna get a new poster up for tomorrow's podcast if we have a podcast. I'm hoping we can have a Saturday podcast with Garrett and AJ, the crew, the football crew, and we can do our Super Bowl picks. If nothing else, if that doesn't happen, I will say unofficially right now, officially, I'm picking the Seahawks to win this game very comfortably over the New England Patriots, and it will just be uh, mwah, chef's kiss, as I like to indicate, of the salt in my wound of the Minnesota Vikings letting Sam Darnold, the quarterback for Seattle, just go off as a free agent to join Seattle and lead that team to the Super Bowl. And my oh my, what could have been for the Vikings if they would have put the franchise tag on him or signed him as the quarterback. Maybe we'd be looking at the Vikings winning the Super Bowl. But I think we're gonna be looking Sunday evening, Seattle led by Sam Darnold, former quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, Super Bowl winner. That's that's my prediction. And the salt is going to just rain down all over me, and it's going to be rubbed into my gaping wound of torture, and just massaged in there, and just last forever as scar tissue in the NFL uh, annals of history for me. So there you go. Hopefully, we can talk more in depth about that tomorrow with the crew, but I'll leave it there for now. One of the things I wanted to bring up, and this is talking about, I've been careful, and I've minimally talked some politics in this podcast, but this is what I wanted to bring up today because I listened to a podcast that, for the most part, 99.9% of the time avoids politics at all. It's a Tony Kornheiser show, and Tony Kornheiser was he's on on Pardon the Interruption, the PTI show with his longtime friend Mike Wilbon, and they do kind of a sports rundown and talk about the topics of the day. And if you've ever seen it, then you know the gist. But anyway, I've been listening to Tony Kornheiser on the radio and on his podcast since probably 1997, 98. It's that time frame. So we're getting close to 30 years. And he's been very delicate. I mean, he's very liberal. He's that age where grew up as a hippie in college in the 60s and stuff like that. But he's very careful about talking politics because it alienates so many people. But today he had a guest on his podcast. Two guests, I should say. I should say two guests, but one guest on one side of the issue and another guest on the other side of the issue. Not at the same time, separately, they were talked about. And what the topic was the Washington Post. And Tony Kornheiser worked at the Washington Post for 20 years, 30 years as a sports sports writer, sports columnist, then it's like in the style section, writing commentary about just the culture and life in the Washington Post. And it came out yesterday, I think, that the Washington Post was laying off like 300 employees. Almost most of their employees were going to be laid off, and they were getting rid of their sports section. And it was just like such a thumb in the eye of Tony, I guess. that's where he made his reputation and lived, and it launched his career as a TV star for ESPN and Pardon the Interruption show. And so he had like his editor when he was a sports columnist and style columnist for the Washington Post. Her name was Jeannie McManus, and she came out and talked about how just unbelievable. She was still in disbelief that this was happening. She worked there. She had retired from the Washington Post, several years ago too, and just how you know virtually traumatic it was for them to be hearing about their friends. Mostly the I guess the trauma was that their friends were being without jobs. But she talked about how how poorly the Washington Post was run from a business administration side of it, and blaming Jeff Bezos as the problem when he purchased it a few years ago, and comparing it to the Washington Times, or not Washington, the New York Times, which is still fiscally, you know, um, functioning as a working newspaper and money making enterprise and a business, which you can, I don't think you can say that about most newspapers in this country. They're just not a money making business. People don't get their news from newspaper sites anymore. They get, I think if you want actual up to date news, you just go to Twitter and see what actual people are saying about it and maybe posting pictures and videos of the actual news. Nobody wants to wait for some reporter to come in and try to type up a story about it and have, inject their opinion on it. That's part of the problem with quote unquote news was it was becoming opinion all the time. And people have just gone away from it. They've dismissed it. And just like any failing other business model, if people don't want it anymore, it dies and goes away. What's the old joke and the old I think Rush Limbaugh used this all the time, was the buggy whip business. So when cars were invented, guess what? The buggy whip business was no longer needed. You didn't have to like have somebody making whips to hit the horses to make them go and pull the buggies. That's just the nature of life. And it's so funny to me, in the left and the liberal side of things, they talk about being progressive and moving forward, but when it comes to something that they really care about and they're involved in, they don't want it to change. They never want to see change. They're just completely taking a conservative position that how can this be? Things can never change. And it's disgusting to me to hear these people talk about it. So Jeannie McManus was talking about from the business side of how it was modeled, New York Times, and then vice versa was Jason LaCanfora, who is, very respectable sports columnist that worked at Washington Post, and he's done other things. He worked for CBS Sports. He's an NFL expert guy, I guess, and he comes on there. he, he blamed Trump. This is like everything's Trump's fault, like Donald Trump caused this to happen. That Washington Post is laying off the people. It's like, good Lord, this is the Trump derangement syndrome at its height. The height of him, it's just embarrassing to have this guy, a sports writer, come on and say that this is Trump's fault. It's like, why would you even open this can of worms for discussion on the podcast? I blame Tony Kornheiser for or letting him go, giving him rope like that to talk about it. It's just ridiculous. An embarrassment of, I guess, just ignorance. That's what I should say. And Jason LaCanfora, I've enjoyed his commentary. He's been a recurring guest with Tony Kornheiser on the podcast for many years, but I just have zero respect for him that he can't control himself and not talk about that. It's just such an inane fashion. It's just unbelievable. And then so I wanted to put underneath that the caveat of politics here too that came up. And this is exactly why the Washington Post and all these news outlets and all these professional mainstream longtime news organizations, the news media, that's why they're failing. And it came out today that there's an actual story that I saw that Trump had talked to Chuck Schumer about releasing $16 billion in funds for transportation. 16 billion. Now we're talking about 16 billion for New York City and New York in transportation funds. They're being held up, I guess, by the president or in government for whatever reason. but the report was that Schumer, he said he would help release the funds if Schumer assisted in renaming Dulles Airport in Washington D.C. To the Trump name in there somehow, and then Penn Station, I guess, in New York City, the Penn Station with the rail station there. If he would change it to somehow Trump related name, and these were undocumented sources reporting this story. These were news stories. If you Google it, there was multiple stories about this, multiple source stories, but unnamed sources, and it's just people talking about this. This is what Trump said. He wanted to basically blackmail Schumer into renaming these famous sites, airports, and transportation places after Trump. And it's like I can just picture that Trump said was making a joke or kind of mocking it, saying, "Yeah, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. All I want is my name on these things." And it was probably facetiously said, or possibly, maybe it wasn't said at all, or maybe even if it's true, what difference does it make? I mean, is that something that we have to worry about? It's going to be earth shattering that Trump wants his name on stuff. Yes, that's what he's done his whole life. Trump Tower, Trump Casino, whatever it was, that's what he's done. So, I mean, it's just hilarious to me that this is actually stories in the mainstream media. And this is why we can't have nice things. And you know, we're a failing country, in my opinion, much to the chagrin of the American legions trying to make this country, prop it up with good citizenship and everything else. Yeah, we have politicians and news media that just, I guess, virtually just hate the country. Is that what it is? Wanted whatever Trump does, they have to take the opposite position for some reason. I don't understand it. I will never understand it. Then, if things are good, why can't they be reported as good ideas and good measures to be taken, whether it's from a Democrat or Republican? If it's good, it's good. So anyway, I will stop there with the any political soapbox there. But it's just frustrating for me to hear this stuff on podcasts that I enjoy listening to, and hearing just this ignorance being spewed left and right, ruining my day, ruining something I enjoy. So anyway, I have one more section here, the temporarily recurring section. I think I mentioned it, that I've been dog sitting Estevan's puppy dog, and it's half husky, half pit bull, but it's not very big. She's a small, medium-sized dogs. I mean, way smaller than a lab, but been a pretty good dog overall. It's been a lot of work because she barks a lot. If she's got like anxiety separation. I think this is my backyard's a new territory, so it's kind of scary, and she hears noises, and if she can't see me look through the patio window, and she can't see me right now because I'm in the podcast studio, so she's barking right now. So it's been just about 55 minutes on the podcast, and she started barking about 30 minutes ago at something. I don't know. My neighbor's probably out in his shed doing something because he does some glass artwork, and she probably doesn't like the noise from next door. She's probably barking at that. But anyway, I guess Esteban has her trained pretty good to where he doesn't use a leash. He just keeps her, at heel, and he's got a training collar that beeps, and I guess it has electric shock too. If she just doesn't mind, if she's not minding, but she'll respond to the beeping of that collar, and I've been using that, but I don't trust. I'm just not faithful in her being able to just be completely obedient to that collar. So I've been keeping her on a leash when I walk. I'll take her off the leash, but if I see someone coming with another dog, especially, I'll get her to sat down and put that leash back on her, and she just can't take it. She just goes crazy when she's on the leash and there's another dog. And it's so hilarious because she'll like hunker down. She'll get way down on her belly, like she's hiding, and she's gonna like pounce on the dog that's coming up the trail. And I have to like really hold on to her tight because she's a very strong dog, even though she's smaller. But man, and she just will start growling and barking at those dogs. And today she did. I think I got a picture of it. I don't know if I could put that up on the podcast. I got a picture of her hunkering down like that. I think I got it. Uh, Yesterday it happened also, and I met this lady and walking in the arroyo in the desert. If you're not familiar with arroyo, that's like a dry riverbed. Here in the desert, there's very ephemeral streams, and they're dry 99.9% of the year. They're just sandy bed on the bottom, but when it rains, and every so often there'll be enough runoff, and there'll be like a raging, roaring river. But most of the time they're just dry, so you can just walk down there in the arroyo bottom. It's nice and sandy. It's very nice place to walk a dog, and I can take her off the leash. But I saw this lady coming up at me with her dog, and I got Echo. Echo's the name of the dog. Got Echo back on her leash, and so the lady said, "Oh, that's a very beautiful dog." And of course, I always say, "Thank you," like I had something to do with it. I said, "I'm just dog sitting," and she said, "Is the dog friendly?" I said, "Yeah, it's friendly. She's got a lot of energy." And but so can I put my? And she's asked if she can let the dog come up and say hello, and so she brings her dog up, and I'm trying to hold on to Echo, and Echo is getting really excited, and they sniff each other just for a couple seconds, and it's no problem, but then Echo just can't control herself and just there's growling and pulling and trying to get over, I guess dominate. She's like thinks she's the alpha dog, and this dog was some sort of like shepherd, like healer or something, not very big, about the same size as Echo, but so I'm just yanking Echo back, and they're both dogs start growling at each other, and I think the expression on the woman's face is just so just horrified, and I just was so embarrassed at that dog because I had said the dog's friendly, and I think it's the leash. Just to be on the leash, it just spooks Echo to do that, just go crazy. So anyway, that was when that when they started growling at each other and barking and trying to get after each other. I just had this vision in my mind. It's like I can just picture Mike Vick coming out of the bushes and like throwing money down, trying to bet on the dog fight that's about to take place, and just like it made it made me laugh to myself at my own joke with the Michael Vick dogfighting joke, but that's because that's a blast from the past. Mike Vick, dogfighter, jail time. So anyway, good memories from the dog sitting blues. Good time, good time taking care of Echo this week. She's barking like crazy right now, so I'm probably gonna have to wrap this up, and I can save maybe some other stories for the future recurring segment of dog sitting capers. So anyway, that's it. We're gonna get right in about right at an hour, and hopefully be back tomorrow. Get the 7 days straight, 1 week straight of Colonel and the Kid podcast. But in the meantime, I'm just gonna say see you later. Little tip of the cap, and you know what I say: be assertive, be positive, be proactive, be that glass half full person, and knock and the door will be open to you. Seek and you will find. Ask and you shall be given. So that's it. That's it for this podcast, and hopefully see you later.